Okay, terrific. Let's step back for a minute and look a little bit at how big is Facebook. Currently, in the latest reports that came out last month, it's judged to have 169 million active users in the US, and in total 901 million worldwide. And as we pointed out, a lot of countries block Facebook access, but there are also countries that are, in Syria and China in particular, people are just finding ways around it. There are a lot of big markets out there that Facebook hasn't tapped. But we're going to come back to this question of whether or not this business model is sustainable and where else it might go. And let's start with, I think, what is a broader question for many people, and those are the issues around privacy. Now, I'm gonna back off a little bit and tell you this. The first month in 2011, when Facebook changed its privacy scenario and proceeded to have a less strict privacy scenario, they lost 6 million members that very month. 6 million, losing them every month would be a significant hit to their audience share. However, I will also tell you that when I posted on my own Facebook page, and I do restrict my page to people who are friends, but I have practically every business acquaintance I've ever had is on my friend list. So there are a lot of people on that list. And there are a lot of journalists on that list. And I said, how does Facebook privacy concern you as a Facebook user? I did not get one response. And I have asked people previously on my Facebook page, do you use Facebook as a personal connection tool, a business tool, or both? And many people who were of my age, which would be lower boomer, said that they were very cautious about what they put on their Facebook page. People who were business people who were not in business, people who maybe stayed home or their lives revolved more around family seemed somewhat less concerned. So those are just some things I'm going to point out. Let's talk about privacy. How many people in this room that I'm standing in, and you can respond via Ustream, Facebook, or Twitter if you're offline, if you're online and not in the room, how many people here are familiar with Facebook privacy regulations and abilities to change those settings? And how many of you, is this a concern to you about what kind of privacy is available to you? How many people will have access to your information? So raise your hands first if you are familiar with the settings. Okay, so pretty much everybody in this room. And how many of you are concerned about who can see what's on your page? Okay, one. So a goodly number, but not everybody. I'm going to ask the panelists, but I'm going to throw out one example of something that I found troubling. My husband and I had an accident a couple of years ago, and we do not post anything of personal information at all on our Facebook pages. One of his kids went in and said, "Oh, so sorry about the accident, blah, 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 blah." We went ballistic. We went ballistic because, not in a overt kind of way, but it really bothered both of us. And it bothered us because we know that those pages, even when you make them private, that information then becomes, just because mine's private doesn't mean this kid's is, okay? And now on top of that, that's now searchable by future employers, by insurance companies, by all kinds of people who then might be able to use that information against us. Or could use it as an argument in a legal case. We were pretty much appalled. His brothers, my nieces, nobody had a problem with this at all. It just didn't register with them, and these are people in their 30s that this could be a concern. So I'd like to hear more from the panel about what kind of privacy concerns you have. And Wagner, let's start with you because this is something you and I had discussed.
So Facebook has this new format now. They have a timeline. So basically Facebook knows, and many people know where you've been and when have you been there. And people can learn, and they can learn patterns of behavior. So just the location is very sensitive information. So for instance, they know that you go to a church, or you go to certain restaurants, or you go to clubs, and so on, or you go to Amsterdam to a coffee shop. So they can learn a lot of information, private information about you. And obviously, this could be a problem. So the kind of on the other side, Google Plus or Google came up with this concept of circles. So you could divide your acquaintances into groups, and then you could post information only to a subset of your friends. So some could be your colleagues at work, some could be family, some could be personal friends. The question is, how popular is this concept? Is it really a threat to Facebook? Why isn't Facebook implementing something similar? Maybe people don't really care that much about these things.
Okay, Raul, you have something you want to say?
Yes, I was thinking about the generational issue, and that has been my experience teaching media ethics and talking to my students about privacy issues. The response that I get is very similar to the one you mentioned, in the sense that, or even if they have the ability, as you said, of setting up groups, because you can also set up groups on Facebook, but how many people really use that, or how many people are concerned with that? And a general response that I got from my students in ethics classes has been, well, it's not something that I'm too worried about. And then we start talking about jobs and careers and what is appropriate, not appropriate, and maybe they'll change their minds as they're approaching graduation. But they don't realize sometimes that they lost, once they posted something online, or even somebody they know tagged them on a photo and of a late night party or whatever, and that stays on somebody's page, you can remove the tag, but how many times do you take the time to go over all of your friends' pages and see which photos they're posting and how they're affecting you? It's not necessarily even on people's radar, some of those issues that might, an older generation we might be concerned about, but it might not be a concern for them in terms of being more open about the way they live their lives. And I think Facebook, this research that I mentioned earlier, found out that 1 in 10 users in the US either don't have any restrictions on their pages or don't know anything about putting restrictions on their pages. That's about 13 million users in the US alone. So it gives you a sense of, and that is information that is completely usable, searchable, and available to anybody, as you say. Anybody doing any minimal search work can find information about you that you might not even know that it's there.
Okay, I'm going to add in a couple of comments here that have come in via social media. From Facebook, we have Dion, who says he prefers Twitter to Facebook. Facebook is becoming impersonal because of all the ads. So speaks to our fatigue conversation a little bit. And we have Rodolfo Roman from Facebook, who says, I don't think you should be too concerned about privacy if you are a journalist. You are a communicator. However, it is important not to bring your life, into social media because you don't want to be the news since you want to deliver it. I would take some issue with that. I'm not a public person I am not a public person by U.S. legal standards. And, I do, in fact, protect my privacy. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, I've been doing online media since, I hate to tell you all this because you're going to think I'm really old, but it wasn't that long ago that I used to go to meetings and have to explain to people what the internet was. And I ran an internet business for Knight Ridder and Tribune during that period. So I've been doing this for a while. Before geotagging became possible, I did a cross-country road trip, and I had asked readers where they wanted me to go. I was the travel editor then, it makes sense. And then I had, so I had posted and asked people where they wanted me to go, and then each day I did a blog post from the place that I was. I would not tell people where I was until I had left the place. And the reason was, aside from the normal concerns about privacy, I clearly had some sort of stalker person who was sending me some not really comfortable messages and emails. So I think everybody should be concerned about privacy and about safety. There, in fact, have been cases that have been talked about homes being robbed because they had posted in some form of social media that somebody was out or traveling or whatever. Because in part of my life I am a travel writer, I really have never posted about being out of town unless there is someone in my house like my husband or kids, because I don't want people to think my house is open, fair game. Another comment that's here, hang on, I'm having a little computer challenge. Dan says, I don't like how Facebook is turning into an advertising tool instead of a social network. How many people in this room have been turned off from Facebook and are turning to other forms of social media? Let's just see a hand count. Okay, so maybe about a third, but it's not a huge issue. And how many people here, including the panelists, go on Facebook every day? Okay, so again, more than half the room. Okay. Let's talk about some other issues here. Copyright issues. Who owns the material that you put on your Facebook pages? Facebook, somebody said. Okay, that is accurate, and when they originally posted that as a policy, they lost a lot of users. Hannibal, this is something that I think you and I talked a little bit about, and Raul as well. So let's talk a little bit about copyright and who owns the material, and does it stay forever?
Well, it's actually a little bit more complicated than to say that Facebook owns the information. You provide Facebook with an irrevocable worldwide license to use the information, but you do not perform a copyright assignment necessarily to Facebook. In some cases, it would be impossible for you to do so because the information does not belong to you. You did not take the photograph. Maybe you got it from somewhere else. You're reposting material from elsewhere, which we call user-generated or user-submitted content. And then, so third parties may have a copyright interest in the material. And also, the license that Facebook receives could potentially be challenged. There are certain termination rights, certain contractual interpretation issues with licenses of that kind. So then Facebook has a responsibility to police your use of other people's imagery and words, quoting long extracts in blogs. One blog was taken down for a while because they were alleged to have violated copyrights. Images are constantly being taken down. Pinterest has copyright issues of this kind, if any of you use Pinterest. Twitter is increasingly suffering copyright infringement allegations. So there is a process by which Facebook responds to these complaints and takes down information, and that'll be increasingly prominent as people upload, more and more photographs to Facebook, which is the sort of the killer application of Facebook. And I see that as being a developing area of the law in many respects.
I think there is the issue also of almost like a First Amendment issue to that as well, because when you repost something, who does that belong to? As you said, if you're reposting something that the New York Times published, obviously the New York Times, if they offer the Facebook connection, they want people to be doing that because it generates more traffic to their site. But what if you're reposting something that is a company secret, for example, or trademarked, as you said, owned by a third party? So how is Facebook going to respond to each one of them? It's almost impossible for them. The other issue is, as they expand to other countries, do they have to obey the laws of those countries? And how do they go about making sure that they are not infringing on particular laws? Or if they want to, how are they going to challenge those? I think Twitter is having the same kind of problems as they go to other countries. Twitter has admitted that they're going to follow the laws of those countries, and if the governments in those countries request them, they will uphold those requests for the most part. So those are challenges that I think we don't necessarily, users are not necessarily thinking about all the time, but they will become more prominent, I think, in the next few years.
Okay, a lot of the questions that we're getting online here are questions about the business viability. So let's turn to some of those conversations. What we've been talking about are, in fact, threats to the business viability of Facebook. Questions people have, concerns, will they keep using it? But let's get a little bit more granular here. We have a question from Vincent V, who says, and Helen, this is probably a good one for you. Is there really any doubt that there is money to be made on the Facebook stock, even if only in the short term?
Yeah, there's a lot of doubt, because you're talking about short term, as I mentioned. If you buy on opening day and you pay, look at Groupon. Has anybody looked at Groupon? Groupon opened at 20, it's now worth 9. And during that time, it went as high as 30 or 40. If you're one of those poor people that buy it that high and it goes nothing but down, you can always lose money in stock. You can always lose all your money.
Well, and just to throw a little bit more water on that, Warren Buffett was quoted yesterday or the day before on the subject of Facebook, and he says, when asked whether the current tension surrounding internet IPOs reminded him of the tech stock bubble of the late 1990s, some of us lived through that, he said, quote, "It is not a bubble. This is not what we were seeing in late 1999 all the way into 2001. We aren't in any bubble phase of anything." However, he also said he is not investing in Facebook. And I know when he's talked about some of those subjects before, he has said that he tries to invest in things he understands and that he absolutely doesn't understand the internet. I'm not sure I believe him about that, but I appreciate the viewpoint.
Well, Jane, also talk about bubbles. The 1990 tech situation was not the only bubble. We had a bubble recently called
The
real estate.
Yes.
You know,
His trading rules also say that he won't invest in any company that doesn't have at least 10 years in business.
That has been his policy, but you know, we'll see what happens as he goes forward when he hands over the reins to that company. So.
you know, Jane, there are two other things you have to think about, and I think, in this statement and taking what Helen said to heart, having been through several IPOs during the dot-com bubble, and I can tell you that, yes, that bubble burst in a big way, and many people lost money. The never-ending promise of the stock market is that it is a long-term investment. I mean, study after study has shown that if you invest in the stock market and it is a long-term investment, you're going to make more money doing that than if you go through any other product, any other financial means for investment. The thinking is it has to be long-term.
And you have
when
to
I
be
mean
diversified.
well,
not
and
just in one
diversified,
stock.
indeed.
You have to be diversified.
Indeed, correct. You're absolutely right. It has to be diversified. But, with that in mind, in talking about the Facebook IPO in particular, I think there's another issue that presents itself, and that is the issue of mobile technology. And how, you saw the response here, and you've seen the responses online of people saying, I'm tired of being advertised to death on Facebook. Well, how is that going to translate? That's the model that Facebook has used up to date for monetizing its business model. But what's it going to be like once it goes into mobile? And we are now seeing, for example, just this past March, you had people spending more than 100 minutes on Facebook via mobile than they did on their own computer. So Facebook hasn't figured out yet how to monetize mobile devices with, its own social network, and that's going to create a serious issue when you're looking at, a market cap of possibly $95 billion.
As a reminder, since I get reminded to remind everybody who is not in this room, as a reminder to those watching online, we're coming to you live from Florida International University in Miami. Yes, it's a beautiful sunny day here. And what we're discussing is Facebook's upcoming IPO, slated to go public, first shares available on May 18th. We encourage you to post your questions and comments either on Ustream, Facebook, or via Twitter using the hashtag FIUFB. And I saw a comment over here.
Let me preface the little granular comment, but I'm an accountant and I've gone through the registration statement pretty quickly, or pretty thoroughly, if you will. Are you familiar with the amount of overhang of expense in share-based compensation from a lot of the stock units, the restricted stock units that have been issued?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I think Helen.
Okay, the only one I heard is 6 months. I heard 6 months, that there's a holding period of 6 months for some of them. I don't know if it applies to all of them.
I heard the same thing, actually. Yeah.
Well, there was that. The company previously had issued a lot of restricted stock units.
Right.
Which are exercised like 151 and then 181 days.
Yeah.
But none of that has been expensed yet because it's subject to two conditions, and one would be the IPO. So the registration statement discloses there's something like $965 million in expense
I
that's
don't
going to
doubt it.
hit the income statement within the next
I don't
6
doubt
months.
it. I don't doubt it.
That's a significant number, and yet if it capitalizes out at 90 billion, you're still really at 1%.
Yeah, but that's going to affect the earnings directly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's probably not the only minefield that's in there. Because to be honest with you, I didn't read the whole thing.
Well, let's talk about the financial underpinnings of this company for a second, and then we'll come to you guys. Financial underpinnings. You know, it is a company that is got significant costs involved in it. It is, people will argue whether or not it's worth, it values out really. You said your team, Helen, you said your team valued it out. And how did they come to the conclusions they came to?
Well, we did, you know, what us finance people do is we got out Excel sheets and did discounted cash flow models based on the financials that they posted when they filed with the SEC on Edgar. And we came out with $30, which I thought was interesting because it's pretty close to what the scuttlebutt was as to what the price was going to be.
And that, by the way, is the exact price that was quoted this morning on Reuters, just so you know, from Pivotal Research Group analyst. It's $30 price target on Facebook shares.
We have the best finance students at FIU. That's actually a discounted cash flow model price. Now, there are analysts that are on Bloomberg and CNBC that are saying 42, 46, and all that other kind of stuff. You know, and they're that $12 to $16, I call that puff, you know, or huff or fluff or whatever, and the fluff factor is going to be huge.
And how many of those pay to advertise through Facebook?
Many.
So, exactly, and they're giving you those numbers, $40
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly.
Now, it's
Yeah.
also interesting that because Facebook had issued some of the shares beforehand, they had a process of valuing their stock each quarter.
Really.
And they disclosed the three methods that they used, including the discounted cash flow. And they came up right with about $30, even in the first quarter of 2012. So that certainly seems to be the benchmark.
And he does not have a job yet, so if anybody needs an analyst, Justin is available.
I say you contact this analyst right here.
Okay, there were some other comments. Yes, sir.
All right, going to, for Rosanna. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, you're right about short-term investing. It's better to be a long-term investor, but my concerns with Facebook is the longevity of it,
Yes.
because I feel like Facebook is a one-stop shop, and they're like the jack of all trades, good at everything, but master of nothing. And what you see now is with other social media sites like Twitter, Instagram, I mean, they just specialize in one aspect that Facebook does, but they do it a lot better, and it's not as personal as Facebook is, you know. And you can already see that for them to grow, it's all based on users and acquiring users when active users are going down as well. And what you see already is that they already bought Instagram for $1 billion when they only had over $3 billion in revenue. And, you know, 1.5 billion of that is net income. So, I mean, the only thing I could see here happening in the future is if they don't get more active users per day, which you see people are already kind of getting sick of that, is through acquiring companies. And I don't think that's a valuable way to grow for a company.
Well, I mean, if you look at the most successful brands in the world, right, the most successful businesses are those that have figured out how to shift and change with the times and continue to innovate. I mean, you look at IBM today. IBM is one of the more profitable companies in the world. IBM went through some serious growing pains about 15 years ago, where many of us didn't think that IBM would be around today. And I think that, you know, the way that a company grows and shifts and changes says a lot about its management and says a lot about its board of directors. I think the Zuckerberg factor here is a huge one to consider if we're going to look at the future of Facebook. You know, he's estimated to have a controlling, 57% interest, you know, in a 7-person board of directors. You know, if I am a shareholder in Facebook, not saying that I am, but if I were, that'd be concerning to me, frankly. And, you know, I think the SEC is going to watch the communications activities as a company very, very closely as a result of that. And when I say the communications activities, obviously that stems from whatever innovation the company may come to deciding to take on. You know, in the case of Instagram, the rumors are that that was a pretty quickly made decision, and it was so quickly made that not even everyone in the Facebook senior management was part of the decision making of Instagram. I mean, when you become a public company, you can't do that anymore. You know, you have to answer to your shareholders, your board of directors, and your communications have to be that much more transparent and accountable. So I think those shifts that happen in management and the way that the company innovates and the way that the company may look at, you know, research and product development are going to be very telling to the future of Facebook.
If I can add something, I have the same worries about the sustainability of this business model and what they're going to do to survive. Because if you look at Facebook right now, you're talking about social apps and connecting people and having people post, I think, I don't know how many, 3.2 billion comments a day and 300 million new photos a day. So it's been mostly a social application. But then I think they will have to talk about ways of integrating business and doing kind of the Apple model in many ways in terms of apps, talking about business apps, productivity apps, whatever is the case, but making Facebook a real one-stop shop in terms of you go there not only to communicate with your friends and co-workers, but also to get some work done, connect to other places, get some applications that can actually help you as you go through your day. So you have a reason to go to Facebook that goes beyond just communicating with people. Actually, I wanted to ask a question from Dr. O'Leary in terms of the organ donation program that they have. Also, do you see that as Facebook trying to diversify and becoming more kind of going beyond just social connecting people, having a real impact?
Go ahead, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I see it as the first of, I suspect, many outreach endeavors. The question I had when I first heard about it was, how effective would that be? And that question's been answered. In the first 36 hours after that block appeared, 100,000 people signed up, checked the box, and said, I want to be an organ donor. We don't know much about who they were, but we do know then that there was a link that took them to organ donor source, and 20,000 new hits on that site. So these people went beyond just signing the box and then going to formalize that request. The ethics of this are interesting to me. You know, if this is a 18-year-old motorcycle bikist who enjoys wind in his hair, if I had hair, I might enjoy wind in my hair too, and crashes and is brain dead. So this individual has checked, yes, I want to be an organ donor, but the parents, now next of kin, haven't ever had that conversation with the kid. So I called up my youngest daughter, who has 2 young boys, and I said, Peg, you know, what do you think about this? And she said, Dad, I think the most important thing that's happened here is that maybe this will ignite a conversation between adolescent and parent. And then she said, oh, by the way, Dad, I know you transplanted kidneys and stuff like that when you were younger. You never talked to us about organ donation. I said, no, Peg, I really didn't, because I never really thought that you would ever be injured. As a parent, I didn't anticipate that kind of injury occurring to my kid. And I can tell you, having dealt in the emergency room with people who have these injuries in their children, it is it's the most tragic event that I have experienced in my entire career, and it's happened to me often. So our job is to perpetuate life, but at some point in time, that may not be possible in the individual patient. And then the conversation of, can a donation of organs that otherwise would be wasted be harvested and make someone else's life better?
And that's, could stretch into a long range of different kinds of conversations around, is this, proof that the person who checked the box was really interested in organ donation, or potentially could their account have been hacked? There are all kinds of issues that could come up around some of those conversations. Let me read a few of the comments from people who are not in this room so that they can be heard. Obviously, will Zuckerberg's personality continue to be a factor? Will he be able to continue to make, it will be a factor, but will he be able to make the kinds of acquisitions that he did like Instagram? That's something that we've talked about and might talk about more. Here's an interesting conversation. Valerie Seckler on Facebook says, Facebook's huge $3 billion ad revenue, will that influence its role as a social network? Will it begin to make decisions that are favoring one advertiser or another? That's a question that often comes up in media coverage. Another comment, Facebook has been compared to the telephone company. If it becomes so big, is it possible that it will be too big to fail? And someone else has brought up the question, who's Dion Butler. Well, Dion Butler says, personally, he thinks Facebook is at its max. The bubble has burst, similar to MySpace, and if you go back to the really old days, AOL. So a lot of conversations we've been talking about as well. But let's go back to this fatigue bubble, that conversation. Yes, sir.
I have something to say, I guess, specifically to that. When I look at Facebook, when there's a fatigue in Facebook, I noticed two things. Within the U.S. at least, there's only pretty much two clients that Facebook has. It's your generation, and no offense to parents, and the older generation. There's been no other social media outlet that has allowed them to connect to high school friends, essentially making high school reunions useless because they can reach out to all their former friends and former family members that are across the states and make new ones as well. But at our generation, the one thing that keeps bringing me back to Facebook is essentially at a college age, who's single, who's in a relationship, and who isn't. And Mark Zuckerberg hit that on the head when he was on if you've seen the movie. I mean, it's funny, you laugh about it, but at our age, when you don't have a mortgage, when you don't have cars, when you don't have to worry about feeding your children, essentially your only worry is, where can I go out and who's single and who's not? And there's no other way for me to go out and about and know that before leaving. So he's really niched two markets there. And I think really the only two ways to continue his growth is to really utilize that change where kind of make sure that the parents in your generation understands that how to use the Facebook material, how to siphon through all the junk in the spam mail. And at our age, there's actually a new app that's coming out that's really cornering the market, and it's called Branch Out.
Right.
And this is, it's going to beat out LinkedIn, and I think this is a huge growth factor for Facebook, where it allows you to, at our generation, to be connected with our friends is professional network. So I can get jobs and I can get other places through my friends. I mean, I have 1,000 friends on Facebook, and all of them at 24 years old to 22 years old have a job. So where LinkedIn is for industry professionals that are looking to make 7 figures and are usually between 45 and 55 years old. So I think the growth factor is kind of still there for Facebook, and I think it's a huge market that they can keep going as long as there's nowhere else I can go to find out if someone's single, and my friends can get me a job. I mean, I'm going to go back to Facebook, so.
Tell us your name. You don't have to give the last name, just tell us your first name.
Charles Stack.
Okay, Charles. You brought up something that's coming up in the boards here, which is positives of Facebook. It has become this huge animal. Why is that true? And it says, I think there's a huge emotional component to what Facebook has provided to the world. This affects perception of the brand heavily. And as a brand, it is very strong. And that, I think most people would agree with the number of users it has. It is a strong brand.
Hi, my name is Christine Montero. I work in the Financial Literacy Lab with Dr. Simon. This kind of relates to what you were mentioning before about Facebook being too big to fail in a way. At this point, from my generation at least, we're very tired of Facebook. It's very saturated, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of information out there that a lot of times, from what I hear from my friends, my colleagues, my coworkers, we don't really want to deal with anymore. And at this point, I feel as though Facebook is more of a necessity. You kind of have to be on it at this point, as annoying as it is, as tedious as it is to check it. It's kind of a necessity to stay in the know. As far as the pros that you were talking about, I mean, I wouldn't be on Facebook if it wasn't for their groups functionality. I'm very, involved academically within, student groups, clubs, honor societies, things like that. And the functionality Facebook has as far as making groups and connecting people in that way is very valuable. Also events, like Charlie mentioned, knowing what's going on with your friends, knowing, when parties are, when other get-togethers are, that's very valuable. Other than that, I mean, I don't see a lot of viability in it as far as our generation. I have so many friends who, at the end of this past semester, posted statuses and said, taking a break from Facebook for the summer. So glad to be kind of like off the network. And I feel like that's a growing trend. I mean, yeah, Facebook is making acquisitions, but I haven't really seen a lot of growth and a lot of innovation in itself. It's buying Instagram, and people are getting off Instagram because they're fearing for their privacy, and they're claiming that Instagram isn't cool now because Facebook bought it. And increasingly, I'm seeing more and more of my friends kind of take off their pictures off of Facebook, attempting to delete their accounts because it's very hard to delete your Facebook account. And I mean, as Rosanna mentioned about them innovating and everything like that, in my opinion, I would have to see Facebook do something completely different, find a new market of sorts to have a lot of viability, at least within my generation. So.
I want to answer the topic of brand for a second, because there have been 2 key issues brought up, and one was the organ donor piece, and that's good old-fashioned corporate social responsibility. And when you have a brand like Facebook take on a corporate social or pro-social endeavor such as organ donation, it speaks volumes as to what the brand itself is doing with its staying power and its sustainability. It's saying we're here for the long term and the long run, not just for, we're not, this is crucial for a brand. The biggest brands in the world, the Coca-Colas, the Levi Strauss, we're talking the brands that have the staying power, the Apple, and so on, are multi-generational brands. And what makes them What makes them be around, what makes them stay around, is that they capture multiple generations. You know, as an advertising professor, you always want the coveted demographic, the more affluent demographic, yet you want them to be young enough to try new things. So, that essentially eliminates, anyone under 24, and that essentially eliminates anyone under 55. So you want that coveted demographic in the middle because they're going to have enough money to buy what you're selling, yet enough of an open mind to try new things. Where Facebook has succeeded is that it's not just looking at that demographic, it's looking at younger demographics and older demographics. So it's become rather multi-generational. And as a brand, I mean, think about how old is Facebook?
8 years.
2004, so we're talking 8 years. Facebook is one of the top 10 brands, recognizable brands in the world today. Top 10 brands in the world today. And the number one most recognizable brand in the world is Coca-Cola. Do you know how old Coca-Cola is? More than 100 years old. So think about that for a moment.
Hannibal, you had something you wanted to say.
Regarding whether the telephone company is a model, I think it is an interesting model. You think of your telephone company today, it's not your old telephone company. It's trying to provide a triple play of television, internet, and telecommunications service. And in the same way, Facebook is trying to be both a communication service and an entertainment service, licensing music and video content, having Netflix. So if you can imagine the future of Facebook being a multimedia company, a gaming and streaming video and audio company, that's one route they can go. They can also be a telecommunications company. Imagine if they buy cell phone infrastructure or build it with their billions of dollars and then provide you with a low-cost or free cell phone contract, cutting the cord with Verizon or AT&T.
Yeah.
How much money do you save there? And then it's all Facebook advertising and marketing on the mobile device. And whether Facebook is too big to fail, it's probably already too big to fail. Under federal law, it would be called critical information infrastructure or a federally protected computer. And Facebook is moving to closely cooperate with the federal government in sharing information about cyber threats and seeking protection from the federal government from these threats, including hackers. So that's one thing that's worrying a lot of privacy advocates, is that will Facebook basically become a conduit of information to federal agencies about what the users are doing on a day-by-day geolocation by their mobile device basis? Will it be sending text messages to the government is a question that's even been raised. Using facial recognition on photographs and then sharing that with the government. So these are some of the security questions that surround Facebook that are going to be ever more prominent.
And I think if you haven't explored the new timeline feature, it is when you look at it through the context of not, I want to share this information with the people I grew up with who, you may or may not want to do. It is really almost like a very sophisticated questionnaire about everything about you and your life. And that makes you wonder, is Facebook about to become the real big brother that, Orwell predicted? We have a comment here from online that says, for all of us who are inclined to do so, dig through the updated SEC filing. You will see where the company says no more Instagram-type purchases. And there's another comment here. Facebook may not have the ability to buy larger or more complex companies, products, or technologies effectively. We've talked a bit about that. They will obviously have to have some approval if the SEC filings are correct. But I think another thought would be, let's explore what Hannibal started out exploring, which is other ways that Facebook can create a sustainable business model. Multiple revenue streams. Does this become the place that you do all your shopping so that everything you want to buy, if you've got your credit cards already embedded, is this become the only thing you need to do? Yes, sir.
Just a comment looking at the more recent financial statement. About 15% of Facebook's revenue in the last quarter has been from payment processing fees rather than advertising. And Zynga has been the main squeeze there. Do you see that type of trend continuing I guess Helen would be the question for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because I didn't realize what Zynga was until I played a game on Facebook one time and it popped up and asked me for money. And you know what? I hate to say it, but with all the people that have addictive personalities that are on Facebook, I think that you're going to see that grow tremendously because it's an opportunity for people to gamble, basically, to play games of chance. And yeah, it's a penny, it's a nickel, it's a dollar. It's not that much, but I mean, I think that's one place where they may grow.
Let's talk a little bit about some other potential challenges. Bogdan, you and I talked yesterday about how easy would it be for 4 new guys in a garage or a dorm room to come up with the next big thing? What are the barriers to entry here? Is this something that Facebook seriously needs to fear?
Obviously, this is a problem always, right? I mean,
Yes,
for
good point. 4 girls or 4 guys or a mix thereof.
Obviously, it's a problem for every company. Probably fears that, and I guess also the main adversary at this point or foe is Google, right? And they tried Google Plus, and I'm not sure how much they succeeded in superseding Facebook. So that's a very good question. It's not clear if it will happen.
Well, and Google also, I would think, would be one of the primary competitors, and that's a subject we can also come back to because we're really talking about Facebook, but we need to talk about its competitors as well. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, what our generation just saw, I guess, in the past 2 months is Google kind of teased us with these Google Glasses. And I honestly think if that comes through, I will drop and leave Facebook for good. And it's these glasses that you go around and you connect with your social media via just amazing online thing. Now, whether it's a spoof or it's just a way to, kind of move forward, if that actually does occur, I think that Google's potentially one of its primary competitors unless other than my phone, what's the next best thing? The iPhone was great because I can touch it. Now, I don't even have to touch my, thing to communicate with my friends. I think I really think that whole Iron Man mentality where you kind of just look at things and it just pops up because you're thinking about it, that's really the future. And I think Google's, might be onto something there.
Well, and is the long-term business future really as a social networking site, or is that really just the, the thing that gets you attached to, I want to say bait, but I think that's unfair, the thing that draws you in, the magnet, and then the real business viability is something quite different. Google is a very good example of how, you get sort of, okay, we are all addicted to Google. There are alternatives, but frankly, Google's the only one that works really effectively. And every time they change their algorithm, every time there's a shift, every time they potentially create a new product that gets embedded in their search results, they automatically send the world spinning. I mean, they change their algorithm and people go berserk trying to figure out what's the best, smartest new way for SEO. So what do you all think about Google as a business?
I was going to mention also Amazon. I think we are forgetting Amazon as a potential as we talk about, possibly Facebook becoming this one-stop shop for all these different things, this integrated market. I think that would be a huge backlash if that happened. A lot of people would just leave Facebook because they will feel like Facebook completely sold out. But then you can say the same about Google. You can say the same about a lot of companies. People still use them because they see a value to using them. If it's Amazon or Google or whatever it is, Google always said they wanted to be they didn't want to be evil or be no evil or whatever the slogan used to be, and kind of be a force for good. And they are still very much integrated into the market, and they have, because they're a business and they are business savvy. So I think Facebook will have to go through this identity crisis in the next few years, trying to define who they are. Are they going to be really the socially responsible place for activism, social responsibility, getting people together, communication, or are they going to become a marketplace for many other different things? And also, are they going to go for the segments? Is there more money to be made in segmenting your approach to people and targeting your approach to people, or are you going to be this Amazon free-for-all, huge marketplace where people go for all their needs? So I think they'll have to answer those questions.
The Amazon issue is really interesting because I was going to mention that. I don't know about any of you, but Amazon is my go-to place to buy stuff. If I need something, I go to Amazon. I wouldn't even think of going to Facebook. And Amazon has a service, I don't know if you're aware of it, called Prime. You pay, I think it's $80 a year, and every single thing you order comes 2-day, no shipping charge.
They're losing money on that, but they keep doing because.
But, and the streaming video. You know, I plugged in my Roku over the weekend, and I couldn't believe there's like 3 more channels of free streaming video, free TV, free movies because I'm a Prime customer. I can't understand how they could make money on that because, I mean, I order a box of coffee and they send it to me second-day air. But I think Facebook is going to have a hard time stealing a customer like me away from Amazon because that, to be honest with you, if that was twice the price, I'd probably do it.
Dr. O'Leary.
There's another area of the market that we haven't touched on, and that is specialty groups and parents with children with autism, older individuals with disease processes like diabetes, and the most robust one I'm familiar with is carcinoid tumors. And there is a small group, but it could apply to a much larger population, where information is exchanged between patients with these conditions, and it's another part of the social media which is very positive. And if those were to be more commercially available, that might be a place for growth.
An interesting idea, a potential place for growth. Of course, there are a lot of forums already supported by technology that do that, but this again takes us back to this concept of one-stop shopping. This is where I get my support, this is where I get my information, this could be where I'm making my purchases. Does it become a utility?
You know,
other thoughts?
I think the Amazon concept and, you know, what was referred to is very interesting. And I go back to this thing of, you know, the multiple generational approach. In many ways, Facebook is banking on the millennials. You know, in many ways, Facebook is saying that's who we're really targeting. You know, you brought up the comment of the Google glasses and, you know, how cool that was, and sign me up if it starts tomorrow. I've been teaching, you know, the advertising public relations campaigns class for 11 years now. My students in 2005 were saying the exact same thing about Facebook versus MySpace. You know, MySpace is the past, you know. Sign me up. If I can get Facebook to, you know, so I can post updates, so I can post pictures, and everyone, I want to be on that. I want to be communicating that way. That's what I want to do. And I think that is reflective of the way our communications really change over time, and how technology changes the way we communicate. So, you know, when you said, what is Facebook going to be? You know, are they going to be this, you know, overall marketplace? Is it going to be this big social activism platform? I think it's going to be all of that. And it's got to be all of that if it is going to bank on millennials. Mainly because, you know, all the research on millennials tells us that they use social media networking or social networking for 3 purposes. And those 3 purposes are professional, social, and to talk about the things they deeply care about when it comes to social activism. So they're the combination of the 3, and I think that's what Facebook has provided.
And just a commercial message again, as a reminder to those watching online, we're coming to you live from Florida International University in Miami, where we're discussing Facebook's upcoming initial public offering. We encourage you, and we don't have a lot of time left, so get those fingers cracking. We encourage you to post your questions and comments either on Ustream, Facebook, or Twitter using the hashtag FIUFB. Yes, sir.
So if we go back to the root of today of Facebook goes public, is anybody considering putting FB into their portfolio during IPO? I mean, that's why we're here, right? I mean, that's why I'm here. Is
That's
anybody
a good
going to do
question.
that?
I would consider it. I mean, I think it could easily go from the opening rise during the day, and you could sell it the same day for
Well,
make
that's-
$10, $20 a share.
That's dangerous.
Or you could hold it until your retirement. If you'd, for example, somebody told the story, if in 2002 you spent the money that an average house cost in Miami and bought Apple shares, Instead of losing your house in foreclosure, you'd have millions of dollars
Exactly.
today.
That's 2020 hindsight. Who would have bought Apple? I mean, if you were
Sure.
fortunate and had the foresight to do that, but at that time, Apple may have not been around anymore. The CEO was gone, things were happening.
Well, okay, so this was a question I was going to
I
pose.
have one last
Yeah.
question. Does anybody not have a Facebook account? I mean, I've made a conscious decision to not have a Facebook account. I've been to too many
That's
FBI
interesting.
and Secret Service meetings and CI meetings to know. Does anybody not besides, okay?
Okay, so here was the question I wanted to go to the panel with. You have money on the side, and you are forced to invest in one of three of the following. You can only invest in one. Which do you choose? Facebook, Google, or Apple? And I'll start with Helen because she does this for a living, so we can harass her a little bit.
Apple.
Okay, you're picking Apple, and why?
Because it's multi-generational. I like that word. I'm going to steal that one. It's multi-generational. I think their products are phenomenal. And I don't mean this in a negative way. It's kind of a cultish company. And I have iPhone, iPad. I think they make great products, and I know they have a lot of imitators, but I think they're light years behind Apple. And I think Apple has, I feel bad that I sold my shares at $85 a couple
Oh
of
my
years ago.
God. Ooh.
But, I mean, I really thought that when Steve Jobs died, that the company would kind of go down, and it has not. He's done a wonderful job to set up a company that's going to move into the future, kind of operating the same way it did when he was around.
And they are just now beginning to penetrate China, so
Yeah.
that's one to think about. Apple has a lot of cash on the side, and probably going to be forced to spend some of that sooner than later.
Right.
Bogdan, which of those three are you going to invest in?
Probably Google. I think Google has your search information. They have also Google Plus, so they have your friend information. They have a lot of chance to, they know a lot about you, and that's very, very
How does that transfer to
monetizable.
money?
Information is money these
Right.
days.
You know pretty much everything about all the secret searches of all the people.
Yeah.
This is very powerful,
So
and
they're
you know
gonna
exactly
sell-
the
so
IP
they're going to
they
sell
come
our
from.
information.
I'm not sure if they sell it. I'm not sure what they can do with it.
No,
but
I don't think they sell it. I think they use it for targeted ad buys, and I think they use it for their own marketplace, which they have been beefing up. I mean, they have a Google travel channel now. There are a number of things they're doing.
But also, if you're a politician, you do Google searches, and they know.
Well, now there's a good point.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Rosanna.
I would definitely do Google. I think, information is the capital of the future. I really do feel that the more information that a company or an organization has, the more sellable that becomes, and more marketable that becomes. I think that makes the company have a very unique position in the world marketplace.
Raul?
Facebook. And that might come as a shock, but I'm a huge Apple fan as well. I think Apple has the innovation, has the technology, has the cool factor. They actually produce something that you can hold in your hands. And then I looked at Google as well, because Google, you have the information available. It's the most valuable commodity that you can have these days is information. But on the other hand, I think Facebook has the potential to integrate all those different things. Facebook can become a huge marketplace in the future. If they find a business model that is sustainable and long-term, I think they will be unstoppable in many ways. If they find a way of adapting to all these new changes and social networking fatigue by integrating all the segmented targeted information, or you can make the same argument that you made from Google, you can make from Facebook, for Facebook, that they do already have an incredible amount of information, not only information, but they have information that people provide, they have content that people provided to them voluntarily. So I think they have the potential to become a huge company in the future as well.
Hannibal.
I think theoretically on the same day, Facebook would make more sense for sort of a one-day trade, but for the long term, it could be a dangerous trade for some of the reasons that have been discussed: the Twitter competition, the MySpace model, Google competition, Amazon competition. So that could be a risky trade in the very long term. On the other hand, if it were to be valued like Netflix or Amazon, it would be worth way more than $30. Probably more than 60. Probably more than 100 if it was valued like Amazon. I mean, Amazon has almost $200 per user. If Facebook was like that, it would be $1,500 a share, which means it has to split, which there's a precedent for. So these are some of the metrics that people talk about in the financial blogosphere. I'm probably not going to do any of these options, but there are some of the theoretical options that are out there for valuing companies based upon, earnings multiples, revenue multiples, modeling on other similar companies, valuing the company per user as opposed to per quarterly or annual earnings. There are different models for valuing these companies, so it takes a lot of research and diversification is what they tell you.
I just want to take issue with one thing that you said, and I'm not trying to cause an argument. You mentioned that you're going to buy the first day.
I said one theoretically could do it, I'm not going to do it.
Okay, no, but do you realize that unless you have access to buy IPO shares, you are going to be in that same, you're going to be with Joe Lunchbox, with all the people that are buying the shares from the people that got the IPO shares. Now, if you're a really good customer of JP Morgan, they might say to you, okay, here, Hannibal, here's 100 shares. It opens at 30. For 30, it opens at 50.
Yeah, we'll open at 30 at 9:30.
No.
Yeah, of course that's preferable, but people have still made money as retail investors day trading on the same day of a major IPO of a widely followed internet stock. From
And that's
Amazon to Yahoo to eBay to, I could list 50.
I think that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure we got to, is that just because they price it at 30 doesn't mean most of us, if any of us in this room, can buy at that price. And one last question before we close from the online community. And it's an interesting question. I've got a question. What do you think it is that makes Facebook so incredibly addicting to today's youth? And I'm going to expand that, since baby boomers are the biggest community on Facebook. What makes it so addicting? Anybody in this room want to throw a hat at that one?
I think Charlie hit it on the head with just basically hormones.
Hormones. Hormones are a pretty good answer.
I feel like, a lot of kids, they're going through their hormonal stages and they just want to interact, or, basically just a very easy way to connect with your friends. I mean,
So is Charlie.
pretty much. So,
Okay, a couple more quick answers, and then we've got to close.
Definitely the timeline aspect has a lot to do with it. Facebook said that basically it doesn't want to be kind of like a tool or a utility. It wants to be your home online. It wants to be you online. I feel like it's an image thing. I feel like it's kind of representing yourself online, and people want to look cool. People want to show other people where they are and what parties they're having fun at. And, I posted about being at the panel today. I wanted my friends to know, look, I'm participating in this panel. So, and I was mentioning it to someone, your close friends, it's not even about connecting with your close friends, because I could text my friends, I could tweet. I tweet a lot. You really, for the most part, Facebook is there to kind of make a statement to not even your close friends, but your acquaintances.
So it's the representation of your personal brand.
Right, exactly.
Okay, and
And other than that is, I read a study that said Facebook actually contributes to mild form of depression now, because everyone seems so happy. Everyone's always posting perfect, smiles and friends and stuff. So you in turn around and want to post those same pictures back. So it's a competition between you and society.
okay, so there's either keeping up with the Joneses or the gross national happiness, whichever way you like to view that. We need to close now, and for all of you online, we have been coming to you live, and now we'll be closing down, from Florida International University in Miami during our discussion of Facebook's upcoming IPO. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, and thank you to our panelists.